Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into Mexico's auto industry. It's this absolute giant on the world stage when it comes to manufacturing, but it also has a really fascinating story happening right at home. We're going to break down the key numbers, look at who's winning the sales race, and see what's coming down the road.
All right, let's kick things off with a huge number. We're talking about $1.86 trillion. That's the forecast for Mexico's GDP in 2025. Okay, so what does an economy that big actually mean for the cars you see on the streets every day? How does it all connect? Well, to figure that out, we've got to zoom in, right? We need to go from that huge 30,000-foot view of the economy right down to the nitty-gritty of the auto industry itself. So first, let's get a quick pulse check on the economy. These are the vital signs, the numbers that really set the stage for the entire car market, affecting everything from the assembly lines all the way to how confident people feel about buying a new car. Okay, so if we look at the data coming in for late 2025, you see a pretty interesting picture. Inflation, it's relatively stable, which is good. Unemployment, super low, at just 2.7%. That points to a pretty healthy economy for sure. But check out that interest rate. At 7%, that's going to make financing a new car a little tougher for some folks, you know? All right, so with that economic backdrop in mind, let's get to the fun part, the cars themselves. What's actually going on out there on the streets of Mexico? Check this out. As of 2025, we're looking at a national fleet of 35.1 million vehicles. That's a ton of cars, right? But honestly, the sheer size of the fleet isn't even the most interesting part. What's really striking is how old these cars are. 16 years. Let that sink in. The average car driving around Mexico is 16 years old. That's way older than what you'd see in a lot of other big economies. And this creates this kind of two-sided coin, right? On one hand, it's a real challenge for things like emissions and safety. But on the other hand, man, that is a massive built-in opportunity, a huge wave of demand just waiting to replace all those older models. So, that brings us to the new cars, right? And this is where the story gets really, really interesting. There's this massive disconnect between the number of cars Mexico actually builds and the number it sells to its own people. It's a real head-scratcher at first. Get this. In 2025 alone, factories in Mexico cranked out almost 4 million vehicles. We're talking 3.95 million to be exact. And a huge chunk of that was light commercial vehicles, trucks, SUVs. That level of output is just incredible. But here's the twist I was talking about. Out of those almost 4 million vehicles, only about 1.5 million were actually sold in Mexico. So, what happened to the other 2.5 million cars? Where did they all go? And that right there, that tells you everything you need to know. It shows Mexico's true role in the global auto industry. It's not just a market, it's a manufacturing superpower. The vast majority of cars stamped Made in Mexico aren't actually for Mexican roads. They're built to be shipped out, mostly north to the United States. Okay, so let's zero in on that domestic market. You've got this aging fleet that's just begging to be replaced, and about 1.5 million new cars being sold each year. The race to capture a piece of that action is, you guessed it, incredibly intense. And it's a really concentrated market, too. Just 5 brands, 5, control more than half of all new car sales. And as you can see, there's one clear leader of the pack, pulling ahead with a solid 18% of the market. Yeah, when you dig into the actual numbers, Nissan's dominance is crystal clear. They moved more than 274,000 cars in 2025. And what's wild is they're still growing, up over 7% year over year. That's faster than some of their biggest rivals like VW and Toyota. And Nissan's success isn't just about selling a lot of different cars. It's really being driven by one single, incredibly popular model. And here it is, the Nissan Versa. With over 90,000 units sold, it is the undisputed king of the road in Mexico. No contest. But what's really amazing is that Nissan also has the number 3 spot with their NP300 pickup and the number 5 spot with the March hatchback. They're not just winning, they're absolutely dominating. Now, how can they do this? A big reason for this kind of dominance is that brands like Nissan don't just ship cars to Mexico, they build them there, right alongside a whole host of other global car giants. Just look at this list. The number of global brands that have factories in Mexico is just staggering. It's not just a couple of companies. It's literally a who's who of the entire automotive world. And you see it right there at the bottom? A new player is coming soon. Tesla. That is going to shake things up in a big, big way. Okay, so finally, let's look ahead. What's next? Well, there are two massive factors that are about to completely reshape this entire landscape. First, the actual cost of driving every day, and second, the huge global shift towards electric vehicles. You know, the money side of the argument for EVs is just becoming impossible to ignore. Look at this comparison. To go the same distance, a liter of gas costs about $1.43. The equivalent amount of electricity, if you're charging at home, it's just 22 cents. I mean, come on. For the average person, those kinds of savings are a huge, huge motivator.
And if that's a big deal for you and me, imagine what it means for a massive vehicle leasing company.
Fleet Mobility Today.